True success is measured not just by numbers but by valuing people. David was on the verge of realizing this truth within the restaurant chain he had built. Increasing complaints and unhappy employees compelled him to take action. Disguising his identity, he visited one of the branches and saw the despair and pressure reflected in the tired eyes of a waitress. In that moment he knew things would never be the same again. David was determined to rebuild both his team and his business from the ground up. David was the CEO of a major restaurant chain. His success story had been written through his determination and years of tough struggle. He aimed to create a warm, family-friendly atmosphere in each branch and offer customers a place they could trust. However, he had recently noticed that things were going wrong. Customer complaints and the sudden resignation of employees clearly indicated that something was not right. Despite this, the regional managers claimed in their reports that everything was under control. They stated that customer satisfaction rates were high and that employees seemed motivated and productive. Yet, David sensed that there was a different reality behind these words. His instincts were warning him, making him believe that the problems were buried deep within. He could no longer trust reports that masked the truth. Sitting at his desk and analyzing reports was no longer enough. He needed to see the truth for himself and experience it firsthand. So, he made a bold decision. He would secretly visit one of the company's branches as a customer and observe everything with his own eyes. In a simple appearance, he would conceal his identity and enter the restaurant as an ordinary customer, directly observing what was going on. This journey would reveal the true state of both his business and his employees. As he put this plan into action, countless thoughts ran through his mind. Are the employees really unhappy? Why are the customers dissatisfied? Have I overlooked something in the management of my branches? The journey he was embarking on to find the answers to these questions would become one of the most critical steps in his career. When David arrived in front of the branch, he felt as if he were about to step into a different world. Wearing an old hoodie, worn-out jeans, and plain glasses, he had made himself unrecognizable. In this state he looked just like an ordinary customer. As he stepped into the restaurant he immediately sensed the atmosphere. His eyes quickly scanned the employees and customers. There was an uneasy silence and a subtle tension in the air. It was clear that things were not going well here. The first thing that caught David's attention was a young waitress rushing around with tired eyes. He would later learn that her name was Lisa. She carried exhaustion with her in every step as she tried to perform her duties. The dark circles under her eyes, the dull expression on her face, and the forced smile she wore didn't escape David's notice. She was trying to be polite to the customers, but her slow movements and deep breaths revealed her exhaustion. It was almost as if the fatigue was radiating from her entire body. David took a seat at a corner table and ordered a coffee. As he began to observe the situation, he thought to himself, something is definitely wrong here. Just then, a loud voice from the kitchen startled him. A deep, authoritative voice echoed through the restaurant. Lisa, you're late again. How incompetent can you be? How much longer are we supposed to put up with this? As David followed the voice with his eyes, he noticed the sudden silence among the employees. He quickly learned that the person speaking was the branch manager, Jack. Jack emerged from the kitchen with an angry expression on his face. He walked past the employees, throwing them a contemptuous glare. His demeanor made the pressure on the staff painfully obvious. David saw Lisa lower her head and quietly continue her work. But the hopelessness in her eyes was enough to disturb him. He struggled to contain the anger rising within him. Seeing such a situation at one of his company's branches was hard to bear. After all the years he had spent building a work culture that valued employees, being faced with this opposite reality wounded his pride. David took a deep breath and began to reflect. He knew he had to be patient. But how much longer could he endure Jack's behavior? Lisa's exhaustion and the manager's ruthless attitude were too blatant to ignore. David realized he couldn't remain just an observer. There was a lot that needed to be fixed in this branch and he was ready to take on the challenge. As David sat in the corner, everything became clearer. He noticed the murmurs and dissatisfied expressions among the customers. Service was slow and there were mix-ups with orders. One customer complained loudly, "Do we really have to wait this long?" causing Lisa's face to pale even more. She hurried to serve, her hands trembling in desperation. But the moment that broke David's patience was the muffled sound of crying coming from the kitchen. Lisa was there, overwhelmed by tears. He couldn't bear the sight any longer. Taking a deep breath, he stood up from his chair and headed for the kitchen. Pushing the door open, his eyes quickly found Jack. Lisa was quietly sobbing in the corner, while Jack continued barking orders angrily. David interrupted with a calm but authoritative voice. "Is there a problem? The atmosphere in the kitchen shifted instantly. Jack was startled by the unexpected question. He furrowed his brow and turned to face David. Looking at his plain clothes, Jack assumed he was just an ordinary customer. There was a brief moment of silence before Jack collected himself and tried to downplay the situation. "Everything is under control, sir, just a minor delay, but we're handling it." David narrowed his eyes and listened patiently, though he was far from convinced. He kept his gaze locked on Jack and responded, "That's not what I see. Take a good look at your employees. You can't expect things to improve by keeping people under this kind of pressure." Jack swallowed nervously, his tension visible. He tried to maintain a facade of indifference, but his body language betrayed him. David, feeling he had seen enough, turned to Lisa and spoke softly, "Go outside and take a break. I'll take care of things here." Lisa, surprised and grateful, wiped her tears and quietly left the kitchen. David closed the door behind her and turned back to Jack. This time, his voice was sharper and more serious. "Customer complaints are piling up. Your employees are being worn down by this pressure, and you're pretending everything is fine. Do you even realize how you're running this business?" Jack tried to brush it off with a forced smile. "There's no need to overreact. It's just been a bit busy, that's all." David's face remained stern. He let a moment of silence hang in the air to drive his point home. Then, with a firm and clear tone, he revealed his identity. "I'm David, the CEO of this restaurant chain. I own this branch and the other 12 locations." The words echoed through the room, plunging it into deep silence. Jack's face turned ghostly pale as he realized the man he had dismissed was actually his highest-ranking superior. The employees who had overheard the exchange began whispering among themselves, their eyes wide with shock and awe. At that moment, everyone knew that things were about to change and nothing would ever be the same again. After Jack's dismissal, David gathered the staff together. A tense silence filled both the kitchen and dining area. Everyone was curious to hear what David would say. He spoke with determination and reassurance. "Things are going to be different from now on. No one will be crushed under pressure anymore. I won't overlook your efforts. Together, we'll turn this place into the vision I've always dreamed of." His words sparked a sense of hope among the employees. A faint smile appeared on Lisa's face. David turned to her and added sincerely, "Lisa, I see potential in you and Connor. I'll offer you new opportunities and make sure you work under better conditions. I want you all to know how valuable you are to this business." The employees nodded quietly, but there was a new glimmer of trust and motivation in their eyes. This was the first step toward the change David had been striving for. In the following weeks, David kept his promises. The team grew, a new manager was appointed, and significant improvements were made to the work environment. Employees now had regular breaks and collaborated more harmoniously. These changes quickly began to show results. The atmosphere in the restaurant had transformed completely. Smiles were no longer forced, they were genuine and warm. Customers noticed the change as well. "Everything is so much better here now," a customer remarked to Lisa while placing an order. Lisa's eyes sparkled, and instead of fatigue, her face reflected her happiness and dedication to her job. One evening at closing time, Lisa approached David with a heartfelt expression. She thanked him warmly. "This place feels completely different now. I've never felt this peaceful before," she said, her eyes filled with gratitude. David smiled softly and replied in a calm voice, "That's because now everyone here knows they are valued. We had the power to make that difference, and that's why I'll continue to be here for you." In that moment, a strong bond of trust was formed between them. David was reminded once again that true success lay in valuing people and fostering their happiness. As he left the restaurant, David felt a deep sense of peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. When he got into his car, he paused for a moment, gazing up at the sky, and reflected, "Real success comes from valuing others." With that thought in mind, he started the engine, ready to lead greater changes in the future. He let the call of the road guide him toward new adventures waiting ahead.